not sure if this is live yet, but I think we are live actually. Welcome everyone. I'm just setting this up. I haven't done a live for a long time. So today I'm going to be talking about answering your questions, of course, and also talking about, I just moved this microphone a tiny bit down so it's not right in my face. Talking about liver, well, let's just say anger, frustration, resentment, that kind of thing, and how Chinese medicine can kind of deal with that and how we can think about that in a Chinese medicine way. So if you're joining me live, please you're welcome to put your comments and your questions in the chat. Let's have a little bit of a chat. Usually these things sort of start a bit and once people jump into the stream, there'll be some other questions. So I've got some things to talk about before we get to that. So I'll just put in here liver anger, frustration, and okay. Right, awesome. So let's talk about anger and frustration and resentment, because I feel like that's something I put a poll out to ask people what they would like to talk about, and this was the top one, and it's also something that I've been thinking about lately, because it sort of happens cyclical for some people, like it's something they have to deal with on a regular basis. It is something that Chinese medicine can help us a lot with in maybe different ways to what you have tried before. So even if you're new to Chinese medicine, you've never really used it for this kind of stuff, we can think about things in relation to the 5 elements and how they interact with emotions and our physical body. So I just want to quickly check that I'm sure that this is loud enough for you, but I am using a different microphone to what I normally would use, so I might just turn the gain up a tiny bit higher. But if people jump into the stream and they can't hear me properly, just let me know. Cool. Okay, that's probably better. It's a little bit. I can see that's a little bit louder on there. So, firstly, we need to think about with anger and frustration and resentment. It all relates to wood. And you have 5 elements in Chinese medicine, and we generally start the generation cycle with wood: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. So the wood element manages quite a few things in our body, and if it comes into detriment, the emotion that you'll end up with is kind of anger and frustration and resentment, like those kinds of things. They're very similar things. So if you can feel angry, that's normal to get a bit angry, something happens, but to not be able to let go of that anger, to be feel like that's driving you, or if you do get a bit ticked off, a bit annoyed, it sort of escalates really quickly and you're like, it's a bit out of control. So that could be a sign of, in TCM, a pattern called liver qi stagnation. And it relates back to that wood element, or we could think of it as wood element energy stagnation, like your energy's not flowing smoothly. So one of the things that the wood element needs is it needs a free flow. And you see this in lots of TCM books, this free flow of liver qi. So you have 2 organs associated with wood, the liver and the gallbladder. And they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin. One is the yang of wood and one is the yin of wood. And in TCM, they often put things that are part of the gallbladder stagnation into this pattern called liver qi stagnation. And you could even think of that as the yang of the yin, because if the liver is the yin organ, every organ still has yang and yin aspects in it. So the idea then is to think about why you might have anger and frustration and resentment. Why that blockage is there could be because of an underlying liver qi stagnation kind of a pattern. Now, the main symptoms of that are feeling tight or blocked around this area, and sometimes not just physically feeling a blockage there, but feeling it's relieving when you touch on there. For instance, rubbing on there, rub on there with the side, hitting on there. That sort of feels like, it feels like I'm a bit relieved by that. That's good for me. So haven't done a stream for so long. Just making sure it's all working properly. Yeah, so people are welcome to jump in with their questions and ask your questions that you want to ask, and we'll kind of come to a chat in as part of this. But before that, if you especially for people that are jumping in, after the fact, then this is the topic that I've planned to kind of talk about. But the questions don't have to be related to this. The wood element needs that momentum, right? It needs momentum, not just on a daily basis, but it needs momentum in life, to the feeling that your life is going somewhere. And this is something that happened to a lot of people in the COVID time, that like it felt like suddenly I had nothing to look forward to for a lot of people, because all the events that you had were like cancelled. And it's great that life is kind of returning back to a normal state now, where, you know, you can think about things. I can plan for something in the future, but there's still, for some people, there's still a fear for that. Like even I go to book a flight and I think, will I be able to get on that flight? Like, will I be able to, there's a hesitancy there and a fear there that shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be any kind of fear in those things. And so that, I think that affects us in that way. And then not having stuff planned in the future, not having things to look forward to, that hurts our liver, our wood element, but it also, having a lack of ability to plan for your future is a sign that the wood element of your life is kind of lacking. So we're going into sort of maybe personality types of or the alchemy of Chinese medicine now. Like every person has a type, or maybe two elements that are, one element that's very strong and a second element that's less strong but still prominent. But we all have the ability to have all the five elements going on in our life. And like some are just not strengths, but they're still there. They still have that ability, and we still need that. Like you might be in a partnership with someone and they're better at doing the life planning. Like you're like, oh yeah, I enjoy the holiday, but I don't really sort of do the holiday planning, but they enjoy that planning. So people that are really good at planning, thinking about the future, they are prospective kind of thinking people, they probably really have a really strong wood element. But we all have that ability, and we all have that need to have something to look forward to in the future. So another thing that affects this, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to mention this topic, is like inflation is huge, and not just in Australia but in all over the world. I'm sure it's the same. I have a lot of viewers in the US, which is why I plan to do the stream at this time, because I think this is sort of 9 or 10 p.m. for you. It's kind of 9 a.m. for me. Excuse me. It's inflation, affects you. So it's like those are the things that have to drop off, like holidays and things that you were looking forward to enjoying, or maybe you don't have that money, that discretionary money to spend on hobbies and things like that. And we're going to talk about how that relates to the wood element as well. So my advice to you would be to still have things that you can look forward to. You have to plan stuff to look forward to it. And you get two benefits out of it then. You get the benefit of actually doing the thing, and you also get the benefit of, in the end, looking forward to doing the thing. So you get the benefit in two ways. If people can hear me properly, that'd be great if you just let me know that, because I'm hoping that you can. And I haven't gone and checked on the other side of the stream whether we can hear. I'm sure that you can, but if you can't hear me, just let me know. I hope the sound is good quality. Just give us a thumbs up or just give us a comment in the chat. That'd be great. So thinking about, oh great, can you hear me? Thanks, Donna. So thinking about life planning benefits that wood element. Planning something. Now, if it's inflation or just, you're just not doing well in life money-wise, and you're like, yeah, I would really love to do a cruise, or I'd love to do this expensive holiday. You don't worry about what you can't do. Think about something that you can do. And it's still beneficial for you to sort of plan, let's say 6 weeks in advance, I'm going to go on a road trip, or I'm going to, you might not even have the money or the time to spend a night in a hotel, or do an overnight stay or something like that. But just planning to take your kids out to a park, or if you're like, I'm an auntie, I take my niece and nephews out sometimes, to do something, and knowing that that's in the future. So whatever benefits you, right? That might not benefit you. Taking some kids out on an adventure might be the worst thing you could think about. But whatever you enjoy doing. So it's got to be something that you enjoy doing, and something that you can plan for. It's good to do things spontaneously as well, for sure. But that can benefit you, right? So you've got this thing of looking forward to something that benefits your wood element. And it helps that wood element function properly. So one of the reasons why you can have resentment, anger, frustration is because your wood element aspect of your life, of your body, isn't working properly. So another thing that it does, that it relates to, is creativity. And this is also an outlet for the frustration. So many people that have a creative passion or something, like, by doing that thing, you feel that gets the frustration out. And it doesn't have to be like a hobby that takes over your whole life, although it could be. I do a lot of painting. I don't know if I can... I think people have seen them on my thing. I'm in my clinic at the moment, but if I move my camera, I might break something. I might break the connection. But I'm just looking around here to see if I can show you one of my art things. Let's just grab that. Just grab that off the wall. So, for instance, I do this kind of art. Right, let me put that there. And this is one from my clinic. I'll just put it there so you can kind of see that. This is called flow art. And I started doing this because I watched someone on YouTube doing it, and I thought, oh, that looks interesting and exciting. And then I learned how to do it by watching them. And it was a hobby that sort of took over my life for a little while, because it's kind of very messy and things like that. But I found myself being drawn to doing it and able to sort of paint the night away and not realize that time had passed. Like, it takes a while to set up the area, because when you, especially making something like this, you put it on a spinning thing and you spin it so that it sort of flows out. So you can imagine that you need to kind of set up an area where the mess isn't going to splash out everywhere. So, what I did with that thing is just sort of set up the area and then go and do it. And as I was getting into it, I realized like hours and hours have gone past, and sometimes it might be over the weekend or something, and it got to 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you've got something that you know that you enjoy doing so much that you don't recognize time has passed, that's a great tool to have in your little toolbox to be able to pull out, to be able to do that benefits you. Because that means it's a strength for you. It's going to benefit you to do that. As long as it's not sort of getting drunk or something detrimental to your body, taking a lot of drugs, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that time had passed. I mean, something in that way. Now, it also doesn't mean that you have to be a creative person. It could mean that you enjoy the creative pursuit in something in your job. So let's say you're an accountant and you might just enjoy the creativity of Excel spreadsheets. So looking and finding that creativity in life, I often tell my patients to kind of do that, to find creativity in their life. So for people who are jumping in, this is a live stream to ask you questions. And so you can ask a question in the chat if you'd like to do that, and then we can discuss. It doesn't have to be on this topic, but I always just kind of start these things with a topic so that we can get it started somewhere. So we're talking about frustration, anger, and resentment, and how we can kind of prevent that from being a big problem in life. So one of the ways you can do that is to help your wood element, to benefit your wood element. And having something to look forward to, we talked about that, having like planning, and having that enjoyment and that creativity. So creativity benefits wood. It helps wood to be in the flow of being able to be moved. And one of the things you'll notice when, like I'm doing it now, I'm raising my shoulders up like this and I'm about to go sighing. So what you sigh about kind of tells you what you're frustrated about. And that's a big part of like stagnation of the wood element, and liver chi stagnation particularly, they call that in TCM. So if you find yourself sighing about things, chances are that's something that's a cause for frustration for you. It might be something that you need to think about dealing with. and helping you do that so that you don't have that just general frustration kind of building up, building. So that's some things. Now, movement, those things kind of create a psychological movement, right? Like plannings to do stuff, creativity, enjoyments, that kind of stuff. But also physical movement definitely helps your wood element, and it helps people who have frustration and anger at that very moment. There's a lot of political stuff going on in the world right now. I mean, when is there ever not? Like, there's always that stuff happening. So if things aren't going your way, and you feel that that's out of your control, and you're like, oh, I wish things were different, and you don't know how to intervene in that, you don't know what to do, but you feel angry, you just feel upset, you feel angry, then doing physical exercise can sometimes help that to not be so pent up in your body. In Chinese medicine, anger and frustration tends to create a heating energy that kind of goes up, so it makes your yang flare up. And for a lot of people, they get headaches, they get tightness in their neck and their shoulders. It affects your gallbladder channel because that's a wood element thing. So it kind of can affect you in the eyes, the ears, the side of the head. This kind of area is your gallbladder channel, and sciatica, that kind of stuff that's related to your gallbladder channel. So all those things are going to be part of that frustration and resentment. So movement definitely helps that. Movement kind of, so it could be just going for a walk. It could be stretching. It could be something physical, like just literally boxing it out or whatever. Do that at your own level of fitness, what you're happy to do. Don't go and expend your... don't go and hurt yourself, is what I'm saying. Consult your doctor if you need to do that before you start doing something. But generally walking, even if it's not really that seemingly that physical, you can just get started by doing walking. And if you walk for long enough, like usually after 20 minutes, 30 minutes of walking, your heart rate's going to increase just naturally because you've been walking for a while. And you can incorporate like going for walks where there might be hills and things like that at different capacities. That can be quite good to kind of give it some variance. Certainly nature can kind of help us. So that's the first aspect of physical movement, right? So we've got psychological movement, creativity, doing new things, and that's another thing to think about with wood, is it relates to springtime, and that relates to doing new things and newness and new life. So being able to breathe new life into something, and it's not as easy as it sounds. I know that for some people it can be hard. It can be combined. You can have depression and feeling flat and feeling like, oh, I can't even get going. And if that's the case, you probably need help from a practitioner at that point to get going. And acupuncture is really, really, really good for liver qi stagnation. Like, it's one of the best patterns of disharmony that acupuncture can treat. Someone recently asked me on, I think it was Instagram, on my Chinese medicine podcast Instagram, Marie, what's the difference? Like, what's better, acupuncture or herbs? And I will do a proper video about this. But there's some things that acupuncture can treat really quickly or affect in your body really quickly that herbs don't do that as quickly. They do it from a different way. And one of those things is that releasing that happens from things being stuck in the muscle or the channel level. And for some people that can trigger then an emotional response, and that's like this, maybe you've gone for a massage and you've had an emotional response after the massage, like you felt like crying or you felt really emotional, because it can have these connections between your muscle, which is literally your channels, like your organ channels, and like your fascia, your body tissues on the exterior types of areas, like so your muscle and your lymphatic system and that kind of stuff, versus your actual solid organs, right, internal organs. Herbs don't act on channels very easily. They can do, but they don't. That's not their main purpose. Like they act more on internally. Like you're taking them straight into your gut, and they're going to act on there straight away. That's the first place they're going to have a chance to act on. Whereas with acupuncture, it's going to firstly act on the periphery of your body and then have the the effects, to go internally. So for some people actually find a really big, huge benefit when they've got liver qi stagnation. They just feel amazing from acupuncture. The points you could try to use for yourself would be what we call the four. Oh, I tapped the microphone. Sorry, the four gates. So you've got the hergu, the large intestine 4, just here on your hand. So if you go like that, sort of make a pointing hand, and you just go in that little gap there. It's not that little ball that you massage, but it's closer to your index finger. I'm not doing it very well here, but just kind of there, that point there. So that's large intestine 4. So you can easily press that. And the other one is liver 3. It's on your foot, and it's kind of in a similar situation there, but between your big toe and your second toe, so your first and second metatarsal, like your big great toe and your second toe. You could just use like a little thing, like here's a little makeup thing. You could just use something like that to kind of press down on it, down onto your foot, just sort of using something that's got a kind of a not too sharp pointed edge to kind of press into the points. Little massage tools, those little massage guns, you can kind of use that. So if people want to ask a question that's not related to this topic, that's totally fine. Just type your question into the chat. So these are the kinds of things we can do to help stop frustration, resentment, anger, right? That's the topic we're starting with today. So we can move qi physically. You can try acupuncture or acupressure to kind of move qi. I've got some exercises on my channel about the gallbladder channel here, doing the tapping at the side. That can be helpful. Another thing you can try is also thinking about things in the 5 elements to help wood function better. So the idea is if wood is functioning properly, it has a flexibility, and things happen to you and you're like, yeah, I might feel a bit frustrated, a bit annoyed, but I'm not sort of angry and it's really affecting me. It's not about removing things from your life that frustrate you. This is the point, right? You need to be resilient to that and flexible to that, not sort of triggered by that every time. In Chinese medicine, they never say, oh, you just remove the annoyance here. Like you just, and that's what our society is kind of teaching us, that, oh, you need to stop hate speeching me, or you need to stop doing this to me. Well, no, like that's not how we think about it. We think about it like your body's reacting like that with a physical reaction. So let's say it is causing you some people get annoyed and they get really sick. They get nausea or vomiting or headaches, all those symptoms, and they get really affected by it. We're like, okay, you should be able to be flowing with it. It still affects you. If it still annoys you, you don't like it, but it's not making you physically ill, right? So one of the ways you could help make wood work better is to nourish water, nourishing wood. So we have wood, fire, earth, metal, water, and this is the generating cycle. So water generates wood. Now, what's water? Water is stillness. It relates to the season of winter. It's the stillness and not the movement. And so mindfulness could help with this. And I would say if you are very, 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 very angry and you really can't, and you're really frustrated and resentful, you'd still need the exercise. You can't just do the stillness and not the exercise, because your body has this pent up frustration and it kind of needs to let some of that out. But going to the gym every single day would actually be more detrimental to you if you were sweating and sweating and sweating. That can create its own detriment in itself. And if you just sort of, oh, I need that to kind of function, that's not great. So what we would say is do both. Have some of that movement, but also have some of that stillness. So what are some things that the stillness could bring? If you've got some ideas, you can pop them in the chat here. What are some things you do for stillness? So stillness could be meditation, mindfulness. Water is a really important thing because we're talking about the water element. So being near water can help people in this way. Being around water, hearing the sound of water, babbling brook, I wouldn't go to a massive waterfall. It's so loud. What the peacefulness of water, so the stillness of water and the gentle movement of water. And you can now think about that in terms of the wood flexibility. So in Chinese medicine, we think wood without water wood that's nourished by water bends and flexes. So think about it like a green stick, a tree that's growing, and you've got this green stick. It's a new tree. That's actually what wood is represented mostly by, not the brown old stick that sort of snaps in half. That's dead wood. So you want to be this kind of flexible when you need that water to nourish the wood, and then you can bend and flex, not bend and snap. So if water's not nourishing your wood, you might easily bend and snap, and you can become snappy. You can become, annoyed and stuff like that. So some of this stuff is just stuff that happens to us, right? And that's why I want to talk about this topic, because society kind of is promoting, well, not promoting, but creating this environment where it's easy to get annoyed. It's easy to get angry and frustrated. Things are happening that are so out of your control sometimes that can make you feel annoyed. Like things aren't, not so much just like a little kid, like, oh, it's not going my way, but you might look at society and think, oh man, there's just so much crime happening, or the political climate, or things like that, or forces that are happening that you think are not great. Like there's so much stuff that can make you feel frustrated and annoyed. So this can kind of help you make yourself the strongest you can, make yourself the most resilient you can, so you can face it. And then you're more empowered to be able to do what you can do, like do what you are supposed to be doing in life. And then take the action and do what you want to do. So if people have a question, feel free to ask the questions in the chat. No, there's no wrong question. It could be a simple question. It could be, I can't really answer people's questions about their personal health situation, so it needs to be a generic kind of question about a concept or a thing. But we can have a bit of a back and forward in this forum. So if you've got a question, that's what this is for. So so we can use water to nourish wood. So that's one of the ways. Now the other aspect of the 5 elements, so you have wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. The other thing that helps wood is metal controls wood. What does that mean? The metal element, it helps it by controlling it. So these things can go out of control, or it could go the other way around. So if you have wood, if you do have frustration, resentment, anger, and you have like a liver, chi stagnation, we can say wood can insult metal. In that case, people get a cough from being angry, or the anxiety happens and the frustration happens, and then they get a cough. That would be wood insulting metal. That's how we would see that pattern. How do we help ourselves with this aspect? Well, what relates to metal is breathing, so breath control. And again, that kind of is part and parcel with a lot of mindfulness, not all of them, but some mindfulness practices deal with your breath. And one of the things with breath work or with your breathing is this idea of letting go. Like you have to let your breath go. You can't just hold on to your breath, otherwise you're going to die. So as you're breathing in and you breathe out, you're letting you're letting things go. You're letting that air that you know is no longer purposeful for your body, that carbon dioxide, you're letting that out. And that in itself can help people if they are in a state of anger. So what that's doing in a Chinese medicine way is, let's say you're really angry and you know people say, oh, take a few deep breaths and calm down. I wouldn't say calm down to someone who's already angry, because they're like, no, I'm gonna calm down. Like, don't tell me to calm down. But that breathing then suddenly helps metal to be able to control wood, right? So wood's trying to get out of control with the excessive anger and the frustration, and that breathing grounds wood. It kind of brings wood back to its rightful place, stops it from growing out of control. So breath stuff, so that can be part of it. I recently did a video on the channel about helping the metal element for autumn, like getting ready for winter. I think I called it winter health. And if it's not really got nothing to do with winter, for some of the things you can actually just do them any old time. But this idea of letting go, like letting go of stuff, letting go of possessions, not to the point where you're just going around with a barrel on you and you've got nothing else, but not having accumulations of stuff that are going to overwhelm you, like that can also be really useful to it's almost like purging the metal element of its encumbrances, so then it's better able to do its job. So think about this: if you have a house and it's full of stuff, there's more things to clean, and then that makes life harder for you. So by having less stuff, you've actually got a better quality of life and a better, it's easier. Now, you don't want to have so little stuff that you're like, oh, I wish I had a pot to cook my food in because I've given it away and I've got nothing. So it needs to be that balance of having enough but not too much. And what's right for you, you'll know. Like, depends on how many people are in your household. It depends on what you've got. Like, this could happen in certain areas. Like, you just happen to accumulate a lot of shoes or a lot of clothes, and you might not realize that you've got so much stuff, or you've got things that just are not purposeful anymore. Like, there's old things or broken stuff in your life that you just need to actually either fix it or throw it out. I think I talked about this in the other video, saying it's either an asset or a liability. So something that's old and broken, that's it's just something that always reminds you, oh, I've got to get around to this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. Sometimes we just need to make a list and actually work through those things and get them done. And look, prioritize the things. It might be financial why you can't get them fixed, but sometimes it isn't that reason. It's just that, oh, I can't be bothered calling a plumber, or I can't be bothered getting this thing organised, or whatever needs to happen. So just rustling up the strength to to be able to deal with those things. And sometimes our life is just so busy that it's hard to deal with these encumbrances. And we don't realise these things have become encumbrances on us, right? So that's part of how you can help the wood element, is to reduce, make the metal element stronger, so that it can control wood properly. So this is by making sure your breathing is good. If you have a cough, if you have difficulty breathing, then these are things that acupuncturists and herbalists can help you with, those things. And especially if it is an emotional cough, that is something that acupuncture can kind of treat through this way. I don't think Western medicine really has an avenue to look at that, to treat that. So there's herbal medicine treatments, and there's lots of herbal medicine methods written about in the Han Dynasty that talk about coughs from different reasons. Like, there can be emotional coughs, and they were described as way back as more than 2,000 years ago. So it is something that Chinese medicine's always recognised, that 5-element system kind of affects our body. So if people have a question, now's your chance to ask it, because I've kind of finished this concept of frustration, anger, resentment. I'll just recap some of those ideas, but I'd love to answer some people's questions here in the chat live. So wood needs momentum. If it doesn't have momentum, it's not going to have its ability to move properly. And then when things come your way that might make you angry, you're more likely to get more angry, or you already have this built up stuff. And something I was supposed to mention before was that with the metal element, that letting go of stuff could also be letting go of the things that are frustrating you, right? So when someone's wronged you, this is hard, right? It's not easy. You're not going to do this just from listening to one podcast. I get that. But it's happened to me before, where I've realised, Marie, you need to let that go. You can't just keep holding on to that. And it still hurts you. It's still hurting. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt you anymore. But you're letting go of the hold that's got on you, and so that new stuff can come into that place. Because it's like, you have to think about it as in one way of like that. Well, that's taking up a lot of the space in my life, and do I want that encumbrance there? So by allowing yourself to let that go, the reason why that person hurt you, or that thing. And sometimes every time you pass a certain place, it reminds you, and you're like, oh, that old thing that, those people, whatever. So being able to let that stuff go is beneficial to you, because most of the time the other person doesn't realize what's happened. they're not being affected by it. You're the one being affected by it. So to recap this frustration, anger, resentment topic, we kind of can help the wood element by allowing wood to be more flexible. Singing, laughing, and exercise are 3 things that benefit wood and keep that thing moving, keep that wood element doing its job. Being aware of sighing, like where you're sighing in life, what you're sighing about, and where that might be the trigger of, what's the situation, things that you might need to deal with. Maybe you do need to see a counsellor or a psychologist or something like that to help you deal with those things. And then planning and future projection. So that's something that wood is very good at. That's a wood function, to look into the future, to be able to see a direction in life, to go somewhere in life. So that part, then thinking about using water to nourish wood, stillness, mindfulness, having time for that, making time for that. Sometimes you've just got to put a little reminder on your phone to remind you to do that. And then the metal, controlling wood, so using breath practices. You could do Wim Hof breathing. That's a really good one. You could do just lie down on the bed and practice some deep breathing. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated. And allowing yourself to let go of stuff physically, stuff that you don't need, that's going to help your metal element work better. And letting go of things. You can watch that video that I did on winter health. It's one of the most recent videos on the channel. All right. So do people have other questions? We've got some other things to talk about here as well. It's hard to know the time for the stream, and I think because I haven't done one for ages, YouTube isn't showing my my stream out. I think you have to do these things regularly, so I'm going to try to commit to do this once a week. This is Wednesday morning for me in Perth, so this will be Tuesday night for other people. So this will be kind of the regular time that we'll do it. When I've done these in the past, sometimes I'll be on here for half an hour before people even are notified and jump on in. I think I've also got a link in this stream to my personality test that I made up for the 5 element types. So if you're watching this and you'd like to kind of know more about your personality type, I would suggest you do several different tests. There are different ones around, but I kind of made this one up. And you'll also be able to join into my email list, which means that I'll be able to email you. I didn't do it for this stream, but I'll be able to notify you when there's a stream on. I don't bombard people on that email. Well, I don't even send them anything at the moment. But if I have stuff to send you, I will be able to send you stuff, because it's a way for me to contact some of the subscribers. Outside of YouTube, I guess. We've got lots of subscribers here, but sometimes YouTube doesn't show your stuff to everybody, that kind of thing. So you can let me know if you're watching this after the stream, what kind of topics you'd like to talk about. There was a couple of other ones that I'm going to just mention here. I've got to go. Hopefully this was not going to make a big sound here. Right, so I'm just going to like where I put that little poll for this, it's like I've got to go on my channel. I can't even find my channel from my YouTube app here. Let me see if I can do it from here. So there was a few other questions that I said people could kind of ask about. I don't want this to play too loud. Community tab. Right, so we've talked a bit about that. Oh, someone asked about sexuality in Chinese medicine. Okay, so we'll mention that topic now a little bit. And I maybe need to think about this a little bit more, or make another different video on it. Sexuality in Chinese medicine relates to a few different elements, so we could start to think about it there. So one of the two big elements you want to think about are, well, the three ones probably are water, wood, and fire. So you have three: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Now all of them can relate to sexuality, but most of them is probably that. And the main one it would relate to is fire. So fire relates to your heart and pericardium, your sanjiao, and your small intestine. Your small intestine doesn't really do anything in sexuality. It just is part of the fire element. But your pericardium is really related to this, and your heart. So your heart in Chinese medicine relates to all the mental emotional functions and things like desire, wanting, sexuality, love, those kinds of emotions. That's definitely related to the fire element, and particularly the pericardium. So the pericardium is like, in some texts they call it the heart protector. So it's the sac around your heart in a physical sense, and in Chinese medicine it mirrors the heart, and it's like the doorway to the heart. So all these organs have characters that they're given in Chinese medicine. They, like, the heart is the emperor, and the pericardium's like the minister. So in this kind of situation, like, it's hard to exactly imagine that, because this is based on the ancient Chinese imperial system of how things were done in the court system, right? So it's like, kind of like the president and I guess the vice president. So if you've got a question to ask, it's like you don't just go and disturb that president. You don't go and disturb that emperor. Probably president isn't the best thing, because not all presidents have that. I guess that connotation of sort of that distinguishment. So in Chinese medicine, this idea of, like, the emperor knows best, right? The emperor is controlling everything that's going on in the body, really, the ultimate controller of everything. And you don't directly disturb that ultimate controller. You don't you don't annoy them with these petty grievances and these petty disturbances. So what you would do is you would go to the minister first. So we're talking about the sexuality in Chinese medicine topic. This is something that someone had asked a question about. So the minister in Chinese medicine is the pericardium, and it's like the way to the way into that. And in some systems of acupuncture, you never needle the heart channel. You don't directly touch the emperor. Like in classical acupuncture, that's not a done thing, right? It's not a common thing to needle the heart channel. You don't directly disturb that heart. So the pericardium kind of fluctuates in its energy in a sexuality. So you can see this in two ways: a lack of desire or too much desire. Now, if you have a lack of desire, like a person's like, oh, I'm not really interested in sex. I'm not interested in relationships even, or I've lost the love for love. I've lost the desire for love. And it's not necessarily even just in love. It could be in life. It can happen when people have depression, like they just lose the passion for life. They don't feel like doing anything, and they just don't feel, that word arousal. Like, it's not just a sexual thing. It's like, am I interested in stuff in life? Am I interested in exploring things? And there's a curiosity that has to be a part of a sexual relationship in a way, right? Like especially if you're starting a new relationship, or you're trying to find a relationship. There's a fear that might happen because you're putting yourself out there, and also to maintain the sexuality of an existing relationship, requires that fuel. So this is wood affecting fire. So so what can happen is sometimes people can have too much wood, and we talked a lot about wood in the previous topic of anger and frustration and resentment. And something that can happen with that, when sort of wood is in excess and it pushes up into its next element, which is fire, then a person can sort of have this pattern in TCM. They call it heart fire blazing, and or pericardium, even pericardium fire blazing. This kind of thing where a person has a ravenous desire and nothing can satisfy them, and they're just very sexual and maybe promiscuous. And it can also happen when people get into a disease called bipolar disease, where they lose their ability to reason with what they would normally think is reasonable behavior. So they might find themselves doing things later on after they've finished this manic episode that they've done that they regret doing. Like a lot of people with bipolar find themselves being highly sexual at that time, and then dropping down into a low time. So not everyone who has hypersexualization has bipolar disease, but it's a commonality there. Like it's a good, if you've ever seen that happen with someone, you might know someone who that happens to. Being in a frenzy and being not able to control that. So that's a pericardium aspect. And there are acupuncture points that are kind of used to help the pericardium in its different things that it needs. So if you've had a heartbreak, for instance, like someone's broken your heart and you're dealing with that, then that's going to affect your pericardium. And these are the kinds of points we would use for that. So there's points on your hands that are used. So pericardium 7 and 6 are points so particularly this one, pericardium 7 here, right on the wrist. And that point particularly is also used for that fire blazing of the heart, or this excessive desire, and even sometimes that fire can affect people at night when it shouldn't be. Like they're restless and they're kind of agitated at night. That restlessness can be because of your pericardium is going to affect your mind. So it affects your ability to feel pleasure and joy, but also, so it might be too much pleasure and joy, like hyper amount of that, or lack of that, complete lack of that. So if the pericardium's like a blood deficiency pattern affecting the pericardium, that could be a lack of wanting to feel pleasure and joy. So I hope this is answering that person's question about sexuality, because it's a very broad question. They just asked, what about sexuality in Chinese medicine? So you definitely have that. Now, when people think about reproduction in Chinese medicine, they normally think of the kidneys or the water element. But sexuality is sort of different to that, as in like the desire and the passion and all that is kind of much more a fire element aspect. Now, your ability to reproduce, to have a baby, to have healthy sperm, to have healthy eggs, these kinds of things is all going to be mostly related to the kidney, the water element, and the person's yang, their amount of like yang that they have. In TCM, they think of this as kidney yang, kidney yin, like that's the core of the core of the core, like at the basis of it. In classical Chinese medicine, we think about this more in terms of yang and blood, just in general. Now, when we say yang, it still is the kidney yang that TCM is saying. It's the same kind of idea, but it's like if a person's yang deficient, then and they're probably going to have some kind of blood deficiency pattern going on within that as a female. So most female physiology ends up being blood deficiency, because women have periods and they continuously are losing blood. So that's weakening you. Whereas men don't get blood deficient they can get blood deficient, but they don't get blood deficient as often. That's not where their physiology kind of ends up being. They end up weakening their body through excessive ejaculation. That's would generally be what happens to cause a male to get more and more weaker or more and more deficient over time. Whereas a female gets more and more deficient because they have really heavy menstrual cycles, have any kinds of like maybe prolonged bleeding or difficulty with their menstrual cycle, or many children, too many children close together. And we don't see that as often in our society now. Like I had a patient recently who said, their mum had 15 kids or something like that, like a lot of kids. And, that used to be common for people to have 10 children. And they would just continuously have children. And within that, there would be some miscarriages and there would be some, things like that happen. they would just basically keep on having children. What we see a lot now, which can still weaken people, and I'm not sure exactly whether how on par those things are, is trying to have children later in life and then needing to go through a lot of assisted fertility things like IVF and all the various forms of assisted fertility. That's straining your system, one, emotionally, and secondly physically, with all the hormonal adjustments and things that are done. Like, that definitely strains people. So in Chinese medicine, emotional stuff can weaken you physically, physical stuff can weaken you emotionally. Like, they're going to go hand in hand. You can't just sort of say, oh, it's just emotions, it'll be fine. Like, it is going to affect you in those ways. So I hope that this has been helpful to explain that sexuality question. So I don't think the question was really about fertility in that way. But just to define where those things fit in Chinese medicine, sexuality is probably much more wood and fire. So blood nourishing the fire element to produce a healthy amount of nutrition there for the pericardium to function properly. And that relates to desire and joy and pleasure. Certainly from a 5-element personality type, the fire element types of people enjoy that. They are very sexual types of people. They're very pleasure type of people. They enjoy being pampered. They enjoy the pleasure of things in their life, the pleasure of people. They're very sociable people. And not that all of us, again, with the 5-element types, we all have this in us. But someone who's the least sexual type of the 5 elements would probably even be a water type, who would be quite happy just to be a recluse living in their own little area and then get to a certain point in life and go, oh, I better find a partner because I'm a bit lonely, or that might actually be beneficial and help me. But they don't need other people, whereas certain personality types need other people more. So yeah, that's something we can talk about more if people want to do that. Please put your comments into the chat if you'd like to do that. So that I can answer your questions, because that's why I set this stream up to answer your questions. So feel free to put a question in the comments. Just going to go back to the tab to kind of see what other ones were there. Doesn't have to be about this topic. It could be about a different topic. And if you're watching this in retrospect and you're thinking, oh, I missed the stream, I'd love to ask a question. We'll pop it in the comments and I'll try to answer it for the next one, or maybe make a video about it. So it's good to catch up with people, and I'll try and do these every week at the same time. I'm going to do it it'll be Tuesday night for you, Wednesday morning for me. I'll definitely do one next week. The following week I won't be able to, because I've already got something else planned. But yeah, it's good. And if you haven't already, you can click the link that's associated with the stream to get the personality type quiz, and you can kind of find out more about yourself like that. And you also connect to my email, and I can email you and let you know what's happening with things. So I'll just do one more call out. If people want to ask a question, you can kind of put your questions in the chat. I'm going to have to see what's a good time for people. I'm not sure whether this is a great time or not a great time, but yeah. I'm just going to quickly look and see if someone's got a question. Oh yeah, cool. Food sensitivities. Yeah, so food sensitivities is something that's going to relate to your digestive system in Chinese medicine, your ability to so there's two things to think about this. One is, technically you should be able to eat everything almost and not be sick. On the other hand, some of our food is really, really toxic, and it's not the same food that was talked about in the Han Dynasty. And I think that's also making people have more food sensitivities than they ever have before. Like grains and things like that even aren't the same. Like, are they genetically modified? Pesticides and all this sort of stuff. So our bodies are kind of being more and more overloaded with stuff that they shouldn't have to be. And over time, that's going to weaken you and make you more, then suddenly develop a sensitivity to that. But technically, your digestive system, your earth element, your spleen and your stomach should be strong enough to withstand different things. Not like, it depends on what the food sensitivity is exactly. There can be genetic reasons, and there can be, in Chinese medicine they just call that constitutional. So they would say, like, let's say a kid's born and they get a peanut allergy really early in life, and they're really allergic to it. They're going to have an anaphylaxis and die, kind of. They can't have a peanut. So it's possible that you could strengthen the digestive system over time, but in some of those cases it can't. It can't, because it's kind of established early on in life. And there definitely is a correlation between the first 5 years of your life, how you were fed, and what type of digestive system you're going to end up with. So this idea of weaning kids very, very slowly is super important in Chinese medicine, because your spleen and stomach, which is your earth element, is kind of immature. It's not weak, it just hasn't matured. So sometimes, some books or some people will say, oh, you've got weak spleen qi. Kids don't have weak spleen qi. It's just not properly matured. It's not kind of ready for all of those foods. And unfortunately, that sometimes happens when people are in that window of time. They're just fed too much cold and raw, and it kind of like weakens that spleen, damages that spleen qi at an early age, that then makes it really sensitive to things. It just basically doesn't mature as well as it could do, so that when you're an adult, someone's put, Coco's put dairy. Yeah. Again, this is something that I actually think is part of the problem with the actual foods. As I've had this conundrum myself, where I have tried like different kinds of milks and things like that. Now, I don't think I'm lactose intolerant or anything. I've not been tested myself. But I did this experiment where I tried this A2 milk. It's a kind of milk called A2, and it's just a certain protein of the milk. I don't really know that much about it, but apparently the cows are supposed to have that, and because of making milk cheaper and stuff like that, they use different kinds of cows that don't have this A2 protein because of commercial farming and things like that. So whenever I have this A2 milk, I feel fine. If I don't have that after a couple of days, I'll end up with bloated and gassy and stuff like that from the milk. Now, I only have milk in coffee, but I'll have maybe three of these cups a day worth of milk. And I've always kind of done that. So that's something to think about, is maybe try different brands of milk and look at the quality of it. I just think there's some things that are criminal that are happening in the food processing, the food industry, that some of those things are almost too far gone to change it, right? Like genetically modified seeds and things like that are that now in the system, and that's just how it is, and that's not what our bodies are supposed to be actually having. So one of the ways to treat that in Chinese medicine would be to look at making your spleen and stomach as strong as it possibly can be. So increasing the yang of your digestive system makes it more powerful to withstand difficulties. Now, you could actually take away those difficulties for a season and then make it stronger, and then reintroduce that food and see what happened. And if you can live without that food and you've got something else that's just as good and your quality of life is fine, then you could have that. People find like if they ferment dairy, it can have a different effect on you. Cheese or I keep hearing this little squeak, thinking of birds in here, but then I realised it's the chair that I'm on. It's got like a swivel. I keep swiveling on it. So yeah, the cold thing, right? So someone says, you mentioned it's bad to eat too much cold food. My daughter eats ice every day. I don't know why. Why would you eat ice every day? Um, yeah, it's not great for you. So your digestive system takes up energy inside it to it. Like, okay, so this idea of like, here's the pot. This is the stomach, and the spleen is the fire below the pot, right? This is the fire here, and this is the pot. And if you keep putting cold in here, the fire has to increase. Think about it if you were cooking something on an open stove, a campfire. So that fire is your body's yang. So you're just literally wasting your body's yang by putting cold stuff in there. So you should ask yourself why you're having that. You're having it just because you like it. And some people really feel hot in their body and they feel like they need the ice. They feel like they need that. But if they stop having it for a while, they realize they'll actually feel better. Sometimes it's a habit. You could just sort of wean off it. I'm not sure how old your daughter is. If they're a little kid, that might be hard because they might be just used to it and hard to stop having it. So in summer, I think if you're in the US, you're coming into summer. So ice isn't so bad in summer, whereas it's definitely not great for you to have cold stuff in winter. When you're young, you've got tons of yang compared to when you're older. When you become 40, 50 and older, the yang of your body's declining. So you've got less resilience there and less ability to withstand that stuff. It doesn't mean it's not good. It's good for you when you're young. It's not. You just don't notice the detriment of it. So he says a 10-year-old always has cold water. It drives you crazy. Yeah. So some of this stuff is cultural, right? Like I remember when I went to China, one of the times with a friend of mine who we have businesses together, right? And we have businesses and we went together to China. There's different businesses, but he had a cold or something like that when we were there, right? And they could hear him coughing, and everywhere you go, you get given tea. Everywhere, like we're just going to like a furniture factory and they're giving you tea, and then like just naturally we'd been to 2 different places, and my friend says to me, he goes, they kept giving him hot water and they give me tea, just warm water. and he's like, he goes, why are they giving you tea and they keep giving me warm water? He's like, what's going on with that? And I said to him, it was just natural to me because I've seen this happen lots of times in China when I've been there. But it's just natural. If you've got a cold, gunmao, like they'll say that, and they'll be like, oh, gunmao, like you've got the cold and we'll give you warm water. You shouldn't be drinking tea and coffee. Like you shouldn't be having these stimulants when you've got a cold. And it's just natural. These are just people working in a little furniture factory in the middle of like, where was it? Wenzhou or something like that. I don't know, that furniture city, Foshan, right? This is in Foshan. So these are not Chinese medicine people. They're just Chinese people, but it's part of the culture that they just go, oh, you've got a cold, so you're going to get hot water and not get a tea. He's like, give me your tea, because he wanted the tea. And like they're sort of respecting you, protecting you. It's just natural. Like it's like, I don't want to drink a little cup of, and this is in summer, mind you, as well. Like I don't want to drink this cup of warm water. It's not something we would do in the West, but that's healthy for you. So yeah, there's some of these things that are just really naturally part of life in certain cultures. And I think drinking cold drinks is something that we've incorporated into our culture. So it's hard to reason with a young child. That's the problem if they don't understand the reason why. If they are sick, kids can sometimes realize if they get phlegmy, for instance, if they get really easy phlegmy, and you say, look, let's try not having the cold water all week and see if you still feel phlegmy, because no kid wants to feel phlegmy. They don't want to be sniffing up phlegm all the time or things like that. So that can be a way. Like I've treated children before and they can kind of reason in some way, like if they're about 10 or 11 years old, like especially if you say, oh, you've got to take these herbs, and they're like, ugh, they know the herbs are so gross. If they get better, they can reason to themselves that they'll do it. So it's easier at that age than like someone who's 4 or 5 years old. It's really hard to reason with that age kid about, eat this and sometimes you're just struggling to get them to eat anything at all. But yeah, this food sensitivities is definitely going to relate to two of those things. One is you might just have a constitutionally weak system, and that's maybe come from how you were brought up, like in terms of your digestive system, how you were weaned on foods and things like that, what you've done to it. But it also can happen because I think the foods that we have access to now on a regular basis, the commercial farming of things is not it's not great for a lot of those foods. It's really a problem. Yeah. Yep. Not sure about the bad body odor. If other people have a question, you can feel free to ask it in the chat, or if you have another question, go. That's totally fine. Yep. If anyone else has a question, they can ask it, or I might just close up the stream. Just looking through the other questions that I've got on the channel. So it's been a while since I've done a stream, and there's a lot to catch up on. But I usually make people make videos to answer these things most of the time. Oops. Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll probably leave it there. So thanks everyone. Yeah, and I'll be doing this next week again, same time. So it'll be Tuesday evening for people in the US, and I will try to pick another time because I know this is not. I've got quite a few subscribers in the UK that this is probably like 3 a.m. something like that for them. But I'll be trying to do these regularly. I'll definitely do it next week. The week after that, I'm probably I won't be able to, but I might pick another time. If you want to sign up to get my emails from me, they're very irregular. I'm not going to spam you with lots of things, but you'll also get the personality test. The link for that is in the description of this video, I think. And also, I've got other videos on this channel about personality types, and I put the link in the comments for all those videos, so you can kind of go in and find one and get that personality test. It's a free thing. You just can do that test real quickly and find out more about your personality type. And that kind of ties into what we're talking about today. So the questions we've answered are people about sexuality in Chinese medicine. And at the start, I was talking a lot about anger, frustration, resentment, help. So if you've jumped into this later and you want to go back and watch that, it's quite useful because that's something that we all face in life as life gets more angry. The world gets more harder, and people are going through tough times right now. Like inflation is really hitting people hard, and I know that it's difficult. It's not easy, and you have to kind of make hard decisions, difficult decisions about things that you may not have otherwise had to make. And I know that that's difficult for people. So it's not helpful for us to be going around being angry and frustrated, and these are things we can kind of do for ourselves. And most of the stuff I mentioned to you is actually free stuff. Like it's not going to cost you any money to do those things. All right, so have a great week or night. If it's the evening for you, go and have a good sleep. And I'm going to get on with the rest of my day. So thanks, everyone. And thanks for supporting the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you click that subscribe. Smash that like button, as people say. And I'll see you again on another video soon. Thank you.